Hey, welcome to our Christological interpretation of the Decans. And this will be the last part of going around the circle. We have been through the first third and the second third, and now we're on the third third. First third was about Messiah's first coming. Second third was about what he brought, and the third third, or the last third, is about his second coming and what he's going to do. You know, all of this is prophetic. It just depends upon when you started to read it. If you lived at the time of Noah, you were looking at the first third about the coming of the Redeemer. This is what Job looked for and longed for. I know that my Redeemer lives and shall stand at last on the earth. Job 19:25 is one of the better summary verses of the Word of God in the heavens, because it gives the message of Christ coming as a Redeemer and Christ coming as a King. And so we see him as the Redeemer in Virgo through Sagittarius, and giving his life, dying on the cross, being the sacrificial victim, and then being stung and being wounded, and yet overcoming, and then seeing the power of being the overcomer in Sagittarius is an amazing revelation. And yet we see his continual sacrifice, again, reiterated in Capricorn through Aries. Now, when we get to the constellations of Taurus through Leo, the last four of the circle, things really, really heat up. And see, I know the context, and I can show you the message. And again, this is not gobbledygook. And I'm telling you, I can teach it to your kids. It's that simple. In this slice of the pie is about Messiah. And I want to do a class for kids called Messiah in the Sky, and show him the whole rhyme and reason of the heavens and the message of the heavens to regain the glory of the astrologos. Anyway, Taurus through Leo. Taurus is the raging bull. Gemini is the conquering bridegroom. And Cancer is the protection for those he's called. And Leo is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. There's a lot of comfort in this. There's a lot of conflict, but there's a lot of comfort. Let's start with Taurus the bull. Taurus the bull in the ecliptic circle is the beginning of the last third of the circle. Taurus is a raging bull. In many of the ancient zodiacs, or not in zodiacs, but in ancient antiquity, this was not a wool, this was a reem, or a wild ox that was a bull, you know, a little smaller than an elephant, but was just extremely ferocious. And this is what this was named after. This shows the ferociousness of the bull. This shows the strength of God in the bull. And it shows with the long horns, the push and determination. Messiah was prophesied to be the bull that would push, out of the book of Deuteronomy. And actually, Saturn was in the horns of Taurus the bull when Jesus of Nazareth was born. Another fulfillment of the Mosaic prophecy and the location of Saturn when he was born. But this is about Saturn. And Saturn is a bull. And he's tough. And I want to show you that he's about bringing judgment. He's about bringing judgment. And judgment is going to be a theme that is going to run through this section of constellations. As water and fish ran through the last group, judgment is going to run through this group. And you'll see vindication on God's enemies. And likewise, this is going to reveal to us true messianic characteristics and virtue, and maybe even challenge our belief systems and what we think is proper behavior, or what we may have been educated by religion to think is proper behavior, because this doctrine, this text is far, 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 far older than any other manuscript you've ever read. And the star names here is amazing in the research and depth of what they mean. Okay, Taurus. Let's begin with Taurus. Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo. It's all about judgment. Now, Taurus is the bull of judgment, and the first decan in Taurus is Orion. all, the conquering one, the one who is designed to bring judgment. Orion is the hunter. He's, or people say one time, I'm a fisherman, not a hunter of demons. Well, Orion is a hunter. And I like hunting too, and fishing. I like fishing for men. I like hunting for demons so that I can fish for men, and so does Orion. And so this is the first portion of the ecliptic arc in Taurus, which would be back in the shoulder area. So if a planetoid is in that area, it shows the judgment and bringing wrath upon the victim. And so it's interesting. This is about judgment. So as you look at the picture of Orion, underneath his foot, and he's holding a club, and underneath his one foot is a river that is running. It runs all the way over and through the feet of Cetus, the sea monster. This has got a great message here. And that is that vindication will come upon the devil, and this is judgment. And Eridanus is that decan, the second decan in Taurus the bull. Eridanus is the river of judgment. So Orion and Eridanus, and rounding out the flight is the constellation of Auriga. And Auriga is a really interesting constellation. It's actually on the ecliptic path. And sometimes planets will go into its boundary. But Auriga is the warring shepherd. So this is protecting that which belongs to you, like King David, the shepherd that killed the lion and the bear. But Auriga is the warring shepherd. And it's also got some star names in it that it's not just a protective shepherd, but it's like a charioteer with reins in its hands. Now, this is all about the Lord's second coming. So what we're learning here is he's coming back in judgment, and he's driving the train, and he's coming home. You know, holding the reins in the hand is like the chariot that came for Elijah. But, you know, driving the chariot, he's called the charioteer. Auriga is called the charioteer in some other constellations, but this is because of the reins that he's holding. Anyhow, in most of the constellations, he's pictured as holding a weapon, a bow and arrow or a spear. And this is indicative of the protecting shepherd. So here we have in Taurus, this is the first constellation of the Lord's second coming. We see already profiled judgment in Orion, and Orion is a nasty figure. And we're going to see this in just a moment when we see what's under his foot and what's in the next constellation. I told you judgment will tie this together. But when we move into the next constellation, in the house, in the slice, next to Taurus is when we'll come up against Gemini. Gemini and Taurus are very recognizable figures in the heavens, and these messages are easy to learn and easy to teach if you learn to identify Taurus as the V in the heavens, reaching up to its horns, and then Gemini are the twin stars. But locating these really helps you in your witnessing skills when you're outside, and but it all contributes to the storyline of the heavens. And so the next one we want to talk about now is Gemini. And Gemini is the twins, and it's well known in some things where people say by Gemini they're swearing by the two stars. It's actually in mythology they were the two stars of the entry point into the new Atlantis. And I had a lot of stuff, you know, about Gemini, but it was one of the major constellations used for navigation because the stars were so identifiable. And but the two stars, Castor and Pollux, have interesting names that as you follow them back, even into Hebrew and into Arabic, we see that Castor and Pollux are both, Castor is the king and Pollux is the redeemer. And this is the story about two figures, compadres, companions. In the ancient Egypt zodiac, it was a man and a woman. And there's a lot of inference about this as far as the coming of the bride and the bridegroom. But it's also about the Lord coming back as a redeemer and as a king. But so there's the divergence of what Gemini talks about. But when you look at the decans, it's where you begin to understand the real message of this. And the decans that are in Gemini are Lepus, which is called the victim or the rabbit at one point, and the other two are Canis Major and Canis Minor. A little bit of explanation here. Lepus being the victim in the ancient Egypt zodiac was a serpent, and that's what it should be, because the other Canis Major and Canis Minor are not dogs; they are serpents. They are hunting. They're not serpents. They're hawks hunting the serpent. And underneath the foot of Orion, we see Lepus, which in some common zodiacs is referred to as a rabbit. But Lepus is, the name of the major stars in Lepus means treading underfoot. And it's not just, a little old bitty rabbit, but anyhow, mythology has typified Orion as a hunter with dogs, and that's why the second and third constellations that are amplifiers in Gemini are pictured as dogs. That's what Canis means. Canis Major and Canis Minor. Canis Major is the constellation that's got the brightest star in the heavens. Sirius it's called, but Sirius means the prince comes. And it's as a hawk. It's as a predatory bird. And then in Canis Minor, which is the companion hunting hawk over the serpent that Orion has his foot on, Canis Minor in his star means the redeemer. So the one is the prince and the other is the redeemer. And this shows the dual purpose of the constellation of Gemini. So check this out. As the sun moves through Gemini and it moves up through the foot of the creature on the right-hand side, in that first third of that, this shows ruling underfoot, and it has the star name there, Wasab, that means ruling underfoot in that section of Gemini. As it moves into the second or the middle part of this, Canis Major, meaning the prince, is the ruling message, or in the last third as it moves into Cancer, the ruling redeemer applies. And so this shows Gemini as being a ruler, of being a king and also of a redeemer, of being the champion and of being the deliverer, of being the lion and of being the lamb, of being the strong one and being the merciful one. And these in Canis Major, halfway up, Canis Minor, give an indication of these. If a person's planetoid is in that particular area of Gemini, if it's in the first portion of Gemini, it's dealing with them ruling over the enemy. And then the second part is being a princely or kingly in their rulership. And the last part is being a redeemer in the rulership. So this is the second third of the heavens, and we're going through the Christological interpretation of the decans. I told you that the major course that's going to run through this is going to be judgment. It's talking about the Lord's coming in judgment. And when he comes in judgment, it's going to be tough. And this is prophetic as far as the hawks hunting this serpent and Orion hunting the serpent. This is the messages in the heavens that tells the devil his doom. And Orion is a devil killer. He's a devil stomper and a devil beater. And he's got hawks, and they are actively hunting Satan. And this is something that we need to all keep in mind here, that these kind of Christological messianic traits should be alive in us and should be something that speaks to people's hearts whenever they hear these interpretations. So this is the second third, and this is the first half. This is the last third. And what we've just done in this segment is we've done the first half of the last third. And the last third, again, to remind you, is the Lord coming back in judgment, or the third of the circle. And so we have Taurus, Gemini. We're going to see Cancer and Leo as they come up. Sheen, live long and prosper. But you have Taurus coming back in judgment, Gemini as the bride coming back for the bridegroom as well. This is another great interpretation of this, and especially so as we look toward the inheritances. And so I more tend to think of Gemini as a conqueror than as a bride and bridegroom, but it has its applications in the other way as well. Gemini can also mean a well-balanced person that has both ruler and redeemer characteristics in it. But regardless, the message is building as we terminate in Leo in this last third of the circle, that as we learned in the first third, it's about the Lord's first coming. The second third about what he made available after he came, and this last third about his second coming and what he's going to do. And we'll find out more about what he's going to do in the next segment.